All right, hi guys. Nice e-learning today with all of our snow. A couple quick little things in case you didn't read the whole email or whatever that I sent out, or if you didn't see it on the calendar. I'm gonna push back a couple things just because of not being in class today. So I'm gonna finish up notes 5 today so that you guys can finish off homework number 5. If you remember last week or our last day of class that we had, we went through this first part of notes number 5 where we looked at changing percents into fractions and decimals. We also talked about changing a fraction or a number into a percent. And then I told you on the homework, you should have been able to get through number 1 through 12. If you had questions on any of those, just remember to circle it or highlight it or star it or something, and we can go over those in class when we get back to school in person. But I do want to finish off notes number 5 so you guys can finish off that homework. But I am going to push our next set of notes to the next class. So that's going to push everything one day. So that means we won't take our full quiz until next week. So next week we'll have a quiz day, a review day, and then the test will be next Friday now instead of, I think it was Wednesday. So I'm just pushing everything one day just so you guys know, okay? All right, so to finish off the percent problems here, like I said, we went through changing percents into fractions and decimals, and then writing a fraction or a number as a percent. We can use proportions to do that, right? A lot of times, the other thing we're always looking to do is like finding a percent of a certain number, or maybe I want to know what percentage something is of another number. And again, we can use proportions to do a lot of this. And I know that some of you might have your own methods of doing this problem, and that is totally fine with me. Just make sure on your homework or on a test or whatever you are showing me the work that you're doing so I know how you got your answers, okay? Other than that, if you have another way to do these, that's fine. One way that I always found very helpful when thinking about percentages and kind of turning these into math problems is remembering that anytime you see the word of, that you want to always think of multiply. Okay, when we're talking percents, anytime you see the word of is multiply, and anytime you see the word is, that's our equals. We've talked about that before with word problems, okay? So, for example, this first one says that 15% of 180 is what number, right? Okay, so basically that means that 15% of means times 180 would be our equals, and then what number is I don't know, or we can plug in x, right? Okay, so then when I go to set up an equation to solve that, you can do a couple things. You can change the 15% to a decimal if you want to do it that way. Or if you want to stick with the proportions that we've done, you can change the percent to a proportion. So remember, anytime I do a percent, we just put that number over 100. So this would be 15 over 100 times 180, and I'm going to put that over 1 just so I've got both my fractions, equals, and we'll just call that x is what we're looking for, right? Now, before I go and multiply these, I can help myself out a little bit by canceling or reducing these fractions. First of all, I'm going to divide both the 100 and the 180 by 10. So basically, I'm just going to cross out that last 0. That's one thing I can do. I can also then reduce the 15 over the 10. I can divide both of those by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 10 divided by 5 is 2, right? You could even keep going here. I can do the 2 and the 18. So I'm going to cross out the 2 and make it a 1. And I can cross out the 18 and make that a 9. And now when I multiply straight across, on the top I've got 3 times 9. So that's 27. And then on the bottom, it's 1 times 1, which is 1. So then that means our answer is just 27. So I can say 15% of 180 is 27. Okay, and when you do these problems, I want you to write that sentence out like that, just to show that you understand how this makes sense. So 15% of 180 is 27. It makes sense that my number 27 is smaller than 180 because I only want 15% of that number. Okay, all right, we'll try a couple others. Sometimes the words will be jumbled around in different directions. So again, just kind of translate it into an equation before you start trying to figure it out. So here I've got 23. Come on, there we go. Oops. My pen's being goofy. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so 23 is, so that's my equals, 25% of, so there's my times, what number? And I don't know, so there's where my x will go, right? So now I'm just going to change that into a proportion or fraction. So we can set it up. So we've got 23 equals my 25%, that's 25 over 100, times my x, right? Or 25 over 100 times x, that's just 25 100ths x, right? And again, I can reduce that fraction to make my job a little bit easier here. 25 out of 100, well, those are both divisible by 25, so that's 1/4, right? So now we've got 23 equals 1/4 x. So then to solve for x, I need to get rid of that denominator. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. Right? So then my 4's crossed out over here, and all I have left is x. And then my 23 times 4, that would be 80 plus 12, that's 92. So then if I write out my sentence again here, I would say 23 is 25% of 92. And that makes sense because 23 is smaller than 92, and that's only 25% of that number. Okay, so kind of replace with the words, and then set up the fractions you can solve. Next one, what percent of 64 is 48? So this one, what percent, so that's the part I'm trying to find out. Of would be my times, 64 is my equals, and then 48, right? Now when I do what percent, remember with our percent, we always put it out of 100 or over 100. So since I don't know the percent, I'm going to do x over 100 times the 64 equals 48. Again, you can put the 64 over 1. Again, I can reduce to kind of make my job a little bit easier here. So if I divide the 64 and 100, those are both divisible by 4. So my 100 would become a 25. My 64 would become a 16. So now I've got x over 25 times 16, right? Or I could write that to make it a little bit easier. I can put it as 16 over 25x equals 48, right? And then I should have grabbed my calculator probably for this part. So I'm going to multiply by 25, multiply by 25. Okay, so then 48 times 25, whoops. Oh no, hold on, let me clear here. 48 times 25. Okay, so then those 25s are gone. We get 16, whoops, change back to green. 16x would equal 1200. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 16. So we get x equals 75. Right? So then for the sentence, we can say, so 75, that's our percent we were looking for, right? So 75% of 64 is 48. Again, looking for that number to be a little smaller. It makes sense, right? Okay, then the last one, we've got what, so that's the part I don't know. You can say x, right, or the question mark, is, that's our equals, 27% of, so times 362. So again, I can do x equals 27 over 100 times 362. You can just multiply and divide, or if you want to try to cross cancel those, you can. We could do at least by 2, I guess. So I can make this a 50, and this divided by 2 is 181. But then again, I'm just multiplying, right? So I do 27 times 181. So we get x equals 4887 over 50. And then divide that. And this one's a decimal. So we get x equals 97.74. And I'm not rounding that. That's just what the decimal was. So sometimes you can get a decimal answer on these. So we'd say 97.74 is 27% of 362. Okay, so hopefully that's enough examples to kind of make that make sense. Just replace the ofs in your sentence with times, the is's in your sentences with equals. Figure out what you're trying to find out and make that your x. Put your percent over 100, and then you're just kind of doing your math there like we've done in the past to solve for x. You could also do these kind of like the ones we did before where you just want to get rid of fractions. Normally the 100 is going to be on the bottom of your fraction, so you can multiply things by 100 to fix it that way too. Okay, then the last kind of little thing here on our notes, just that kind of goes in with this chapter as well, is solving equations when you have decimal coefficients. You can, of course, do these just with a calculator as you would always do them, but there is a way to kind of get rid of those decimal coefficients if it's harder for you to do the decimals, or let's say by chance you don't have your calculator and you want to make it a little bit easier to figure out. So basically, I'm just going to multiply, kind of like how when we did the fractions, we always multiplied by the denominator. It's kind of like doing the same thing, because if I look at this number, that's 1 2/10, and this one here would be 4/10. So basically, we're just going to multiply everything by that denominator, which is 10, because they're tenths, right? Or in other words, I need to move that decimal over one place in both of these, and that would make those not be decimals anymore. So to move it one place to the right, I need to multiply everything by 10. So I'm going to take this equation, and I'm going to multiply this side by 10, and I'm also going to multiply this side by 10. And remember over here, that means I have to distribute that 10 to both of those things. So when I do 10 times 1.2x, well, that just becomes 12x. I move the decimal one place to the right. Equals 36 times 10 would be 360. And then 4/10 times 10 would be 4x, or move the decimal one place to the right. Then I can solve just like normal. So I'm going to subtract the 4x over to the other side. And that gives me 8x equals 360. Divide both sides by 8. And when I do 360 divided by 8, we get x equals 45. Okay, so then you don't have to deal with the decimals. All right, same thing on B over here, except this time notice that our decimal on both of those is over 2 places. So if I wanted to move these, I'd have to move the decimal 2 places to the right and 2 places to the right. Or this is 15 hundredths and 8 hundredths. So this time I'm going to multiply everything by 100 to get rid of those decimals. So over on this side of the equation, I multiply by 100. And on this side, I multiply by 100. And again, remember, I have to distribute that 100 to each term. Remember, because all of that is in parentheses, that goes with the 0.08. So I only have to take that 100 times that 0.08, not everything inside the parentheses. Okay, so then we multiply. We would get 9,400 if I multiply by 100. This one, I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right, so that'd be 15x plus, move my decimal 2 places to the right, so it'd just be 8 times 1,000 minus x. And then again, solve like we normally would. So I'm going to start by distributing the 8 on the right side. So we get 8 times 1,000 is 8,000, minus 8 times x is 8x. I've got some like terms on the right side, the 15x and the negative 8x. So 9,400 equals 15 minus 8 is 7x plus 8,000. Then I'm going to subtract the 8,000 to move it over with its like term on the left side and get 1400 equals 7x. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 7. So we get our x to equal 200. Okay. Again, you don't have to do that if you have a calculator where you can deal with the decimals. But again, it's just an easy kind of thing. I'm going to show you just another little trick that you can use to help yourself out if you don't have a calculator or if you just don't feel like dealing with the decimals. Okay, so you'll see a couple of those on your homework. Try them like this, where you're multiplying by something to get rid of the decimal. Don't just do them as they are. Try this method a few times just so you get some practice with it. And then the rest of homework 5 is all the percent stuff. Okay, homework 5, remember, is in OneNote. Most of you, I think, got it in class the other day, but you should be able to finish all of those. There are a couple word problems on the homework. Let me do one of those really quick, just so you see kind of how to think through this. So like I'll look at number 25. It says that the GSA has a goal of getting 36 new members. So far, they have 30 new members. What percent of the club's goal have they achieved, right? So this sentence is going to kind of help you set up that same sentence that we talked about in the other ones. So I want to know what percent, that's the part we don't know, right, of the club's goal have they achieved. So we could say, well, the goal is 36, right? So I'd say what percent of the goal is 36. Have they achieved would be is, because they've achieved getting 30 so far. So really what I'm trying to answer is what percent of 36 is 30? So if you can kind of translate a word problem into that same type of sentence that we talked about in the other problems, then it's doing them just the same way. Okay, so try to translate that word problem into that sentence. So then I can go with, well, I don't know what my percent is, so that's x out of 100 of, so times 36 is, so equals 30, right? I can put the 36 over 1. You can cross cancel if you want. Maybe this one I decide I just want to get rid of the fractions. So I'm going to multiply everything by 100. You could do it that way if you wanted to. So this whole side and this whole side, right? Well, over here, and remember this is times, so you don't have to distribute. So my 100s would cancel. X times 36 is just 36x. And then 30 times 100 is 3,000. And then I can divide on both sides. So 3,000 divided by 36. We get x equals 83.3 repeating. So that means that they have achieved 83.3 repeating percent of their goal. All right. Oops, not question mark, sorry, period. Okay, so that's one way to do the word problem. Try to change that word problem into one of those sentences, and then you can solve it the same way we did the other problems. Okay, so you've got an example of one of those, and then I think the rest are similar to what we talked about on the notes. Okay, I will be available during your class time today. If you need help with anything, I can meet virtually. Just send me a chat message and let me know that you need some help, and we'll set up a time, or I can usually probably do it right then, and I'll help you out. I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow.